President Trump says he had a very good call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy today as the two discussed the path toward a ceasefire agreement with Russia. In a Truth Social post, Trump wrote in part, quote, "Much of the discussion was based on the call made yesterday with President Putin in order to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs. We are very much on track, and I will ask Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Michael Waltz to give an accurate description of the points discussed. That statement will be put out shortly." Now, Russia and Ukraine are accusing each other of launching overnight air attacks that sparked fires and damaged infrastructure just hours after the Kremlin agreed to a limited ceasefire on energy facilities. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams is in Lviv, Ukraine, with more.
After that call between President Trump and Vladimir Putin with an agreement to halt strikes on energy infrastructure for 30 days, the Kremlin put out a statement last night saying that Russia will only agree to a long-term ceasefire if all foreign military aid to Ukraine is stopped. Now, as you may remember, at the start of Russia's invasion, Putin likely didn't anticipate the defense that Ukraine would put up or the unity that the West would show in supporting Ukraine. We assumed that Putin would dearly love to cut Ukraine off from that support in order to achieve his own military goals in this country. Now, interestingly, after that contentious meeting between President Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House last month, the US did briefly suspend deliveries of military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. One question now is whether Trump would be willing to do that long term as part of a negotiation with Putin. For Ukraine, that would likely be devastating. From Vladimir Putin's perspective, agreeing to halt strikes on energy infrastructure may make it look as if he's doing something, not being completely rejecting President Trump's attempts to achieve a ceasefire, but at the same time not actually stopping this war. And to that point, following the phone call last night here in Ukraine, air raid alarms again sounded around the country. Back to you.
Holly Williams, thank you. Let's bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez for more on this. Nancy, President Trump says that it was a very good call with Zelenskyy today. They talked for about an hour. What more do we know?
Well, the president says it was a good call and that things are moving in the right direction. And Zelenskyy said the same. He said that it was a very productive phone call, even as he continues to insist that the Russians don't actually want peace. He says that only hours after Putin had agreed to stop firing on Ukrainian infrastructure and energy, that Putin did just that. And so he insists that Putin is not serious about peace. But Zelenskyy says he is. He says the talk with President Trump was constructive. And just a short time ago, we heard from the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who said that that the U.S. is going to continue to provide military intelligence to Ukraine, at least for now. She didn't say anything about the long term, but that is going to continue. And as Holly just pointed out, that's something that Putin would like to see halted before he says he'd be willing to sign on to a longer term deal.
The Trump administration, Nancy, is criticizing a federal judge and continuing to do so. This judge temporarily paused the use of that wartime law to deport alleged gang members to El Salvador over the weekend. The DOJ has filed an appeal of the ruling. How concerning is sort of this brewing battle between branches of government?
Well, Leavitt said today that they are going to continue to comply with rulings from federal judges, even if they don't agree with them. But President Trump continues to say that this judge is an activist judge who should be impeached. He got a little reprimand from the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, John Roberts, who said that's not constructive. We shouldn't be calling for federal judges to be impeached. That's not the way you deal with a ruling that you don't like. The press secretary said that the president respects John Roberts, and yet he has no change in his position. He would like to see Congress impeach this judge. And all of this continues, Lindsay. The federal judge, Judge Boasberg, has given DOJ until tomorrow now to provide more information about these deportation flights of Venezuelans who U.S. officials say were all violent criminals and gang members. He wants to know more about how they decided who would be on the list and when exactly these flights took off. So we'll see if DOJ complies. Up until now, they've been arguing that this is judicial overreach and that they shouldn't have to provide these sensitive details.
Nancy Cortez, thank you.